Hello everybody, it's the Outgo Diesel Guy, and in honor of March and Tosh, I have on my workbench a Mac Mini. Not just any ordinary Mac Mini. This is a 1.47, 4 point, what is it, 4.2? Yep, 4.2 gigahertz Mac Mini, which I just picked up on eBay as is. And for a good reason, it doesn't have its power supply. Like many of these units that have basically sat in storage for who knows how long, the power supply gets lost. It winds up in the back of a closet someplace, and that's usually how that happens. Anyway, it sits there. The person comes upon it, realizes, what am I going to do with this? And it winds up for sale on eBay as quote-unquote untested. I do have a power supply, so I plan to test this in honor of March and Tosh and perhaps get into a bigger project with this. Now, some may say this has nothing to do with model trains, and you're pretty much right to a certain extent. There are some train programs you can run in Mac OS that are fun to run, I should say. But there is one more directly related to trains, and it's a particular train simulator that I'm going to be doing with a Mac Mini, but that's yet to come. Those Mac Minis haven't shown up for that particular project. Anywho, let's get to work on this G4. Again, this is rated at 1.42 gigahertz. Pardon me, that 1.42 gigahertz. I'm losing my mind tonight. I believe this has a standard configuration on board. It's never been tweaked, and it was listed as untested. There was no power supply included. It did take a wallop. It was just essentially thrown in a box, unfortunately. The seller was apparently not tech savvy, so as you see, it's got some scuffs on the top from that, and the back got a little dislodged. This I think I can pretty easily fix. But before I go any further, I want to test this thing to see if it's actually functioning before I get into a project with this. And that project will most likely involve turning this into an OS 9 machine. Because again, this is probably, as I've said this a million times, I'm sure opinions vary, but this is probably the most practical way of playing with OS 9. You don't have to deal with the compact issues with the laptops, and I mean by that the blown caps on those things that need to recap. But there is one cap on this, I believe, that can go, but that's basically it. So it is usually not a problem. I think there's a solid cap on this, don't quote me. You also don't have to deal with screen hinges and clutches failing, which is known for that. The hinges break on the power books from this era and break off on them. You don't have to deal with the complexities of dealing with the iBooks from this era, which are beautiful laptops, I might add, but underpowered and a pain to disassemble, not for the faint of heart. They're deliberately designed so only Apple's service technicians would work on them. So anywho, well, enough of that jazz. Let's get right into it today. I'm going to basically hook this listen to me. I'm going to basically hook this Mac Mini up and see if it powers on. As I do have a power supply, I do have all the cables, etc. to get it running, and see if I get lucky or if I didn't. Again, I'm kind of playing Mac Mini Russian roulette here. If I win, it'll work. If I don't, well, I've just gained another paperweight, as I bought this as is. One last detail before I continue, I'm going to be using the proper power supply for a G4, which is the 85 watt one. Even though the 110 watt is similar, the voltage is apparently a little bit different to the point where it can apparently do a number on these units, or at least some tests have seemingly shown that it can eventually take its toll on the logic board and even cause it to fail. So just to be safe, I'm going to use the official power supply, which I do have. No sense in taking a chance. Okay, so I have my Mac Mini hooked up now to my 85 watt power supply, my monitor right over here, and of course I've got a keyboard and mouse rigged up. Let's go ahead and see if she'll fire up. Smoke test. Okay, that's very encouraging. Again, I don't know what kind of condition this thing is in. Who knows when it was last powered on. No image, that's a little troubling. It did post, so something is working definitely. Oh, there we go. I got a Macintosh symbol. The Apple insignia, and it's booting into something. And I think it's going to work. I hope I didn't just jinx it. This most likely has OS 10 on it, of some kind. It's taking a long time to start it. Who knows when this thing was last on. Oh, screen goes blank again, and that's definitely an OS coming up here. Yep, there it is, Mac OS. I don't know what... So I did get in. I don't know how I got in. I didn't have a password to it. And it's coming to life. It looks like the PRAM battery is put on it. I'll have to change that. I have one or two of them, I think, that actually still work laying around. I'll plug one of those in. Alrighty, so it looks like to start with, I do have a functioning system. Let me go take a tour of the system and see exactly what OS I'm running here. This is most likely an older version of 10. Let's see here about this Mac. It's Mac OS 10.5.8. And it actually is saying 1.5, even though it says 4.47, 1.42. So that's interesting. And it says it has 512 gigs of RAM on board. So, yeah, very interesting it has that much on it. So, yeah, it does work. That is pretty cool. So, I'm going to test this thing out a bit, and then I think I'm going to move on to my next step, which is going to be to turn this into a real OS 9 machine, as ironic as that is. Alrighty. So now that I know it works and I'm ready to start my OS 9 conversion, I'm going to do, of course, some upgrades to the machine. One of them is going to be converting this thing to an SSD type drive. Not so much for the speed, but for reliability. Again, I don't know the history of this unit. It's, again, was sold to me as is. Who knows how long it sat in a closet or wherever it was didn't have a power supply in it. Who knows what kind of condition that drive is in, although it appears to be in good condition now. It's basically a ticking time bomb. It could go off at any time, which would require me to tear it apart and do this whole procedure again. I'd rather get it right the first time. So here are my two options to work with on that. So here's how I'm going to get an SSD for this. Again, we're talking about a parallel ATA interface, which is this pinned job interface. Which means, of course, a SATA interface, which is the smaller plug type you would find on most laptops, etc. And modern laptops, I should say, won't work with this. So essentially, I have two options for what I can do. I'm going to use one of these adapters in either a Dogfish Technologies drive or this Transcend drive. They're both 64 gigabytes, and there's a reason for that. Mac OS 9 cannot read a size, I think, bigger than around 8,500 gigabytes. So really, there isn't much advantage in going much higher than this. You're not going to be able to use that extra capacity. So these two were purchased a while ago and are probably the the best options for that. And I'm leaning toward the Transcend because I've had good luck with this. I should say the Dogfish drives, but I think I'm going to lean and use the Transcend for this model to see if I can get a little bit more performance out of it. Again, we won't see much of an enhancement because the bus is going to limit the total speed output. This is more for reliability. The only speed enhancement I'm going to get is I don't have to actually defrag the hard drive ever. So let's get started. I'm going to now build my mSATA SSD. And again, this is a kit. It comes with its own screwdriver and screws to put it all together. Let's get it all set here. And there we have it. I have a 64 gigabyte mSATA SSD, parallel ATA mSATA SSD. I can now move on to the next option, which is going to be the RAM. The next piece of equipment, I should say, which I'm going to put in, which is the RAM. I'm going to go with this ADATA RAM I bought a while ago. This is a 1 gigabyte kit running at 333 megahertz, PC2700. This is precisely the speed that those units are designed for. Going to put this in place of the 512 that's in there currently. Just because I have it, doesn't make any sense not to use it. I was going to stay with 512, but since I've seen I have this RAM sitting around and I have no other use for it, I may as well upgrade it while I'm in there. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to go pull the unit down and do the upgrades. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and take this thing apart and put all the new upgrades into it. Again, this is not so much to improve performance, but to improve reliability. Although the RAM will give it a hand. I'm going to ground myself again. So, usually getting one of these open is a bit of a challenge. But as we see, this one was kind of jarred open from its rough trip to me. So all I have to do literally is pull on the top and it'll come right out. Because I think the tabs have been popped off pretty significantly. Oh, there we go. Yep, I was right. Ooh, it took out one of these things. Ooh, that's not nice. Okay. I'm not sure if anyone... It could have been that someone modified this before. Although I don't think so. It seems to have the stock stuff in it. Ooh, that's not nice. It looks like the... I'm trying to remember how this goes in. Oh, no, this actually clips in like that. There are several different versions of this of the setup. This particular one has one that clips on like that. Some of them have like a pole that goes in here, but this one actually has a clip on the side for the Wi-Fi antennas. This isn't going to matter too much for me either way, because I'm not going to be able to use Wi-Fi with this, or even Bluetooth. I'm going to end up using a keyboard and mouse that plug into it, but I'm still going to try my best not to damage these things. So this again has the clip type antennas. We're just going to unclip them. But usually you'd have to get a sponger in there and do all kinds of work with it to get it free or something else. Here's the other one now free. I'm going to pull this off carefully, though I don't have to be too concerned. In my case, I'm not going to be too concerned with it. I will try my best not to damage anything, but the fact is this doesn't make much difference to me, because I'm not going to be, because these units are not going to be utilized. Okay, so now here we are inside the unit itself. Next, I have to separate my optical drive from the rest of the unit itself, and I do this with the utilization of a Phillips head screwdriver, again, the same one I had before. I may have to use a side. No, actually, this bit should be good for it. I'm going to go inside and turn each of these screws until they come loose. There are 3 of them, so here's one. Okay, so now this should be pretty free by this point. There it goes. It comes up. And what we're going to do is just gently pull up on it until it comes loose. And there we are. It's out. Be very careful. Oh, God. I don't like the noises it just made, but it seems okay. Let me thread these through here. I'm going to try to move this to the side so I don't have to unthread those things. I don't want to damage anything. So I'm just going to lay this to the side. I'm going to inspect everything. So we do have some dust in here I should get rid of. So I'm going to go grab my dust, some air, compressed air, and blow that out. What else do we have? We also have our ramp. We also have... That's basically it. There isn't very much dust on this thing. It doesn't look like it got that much mileage. It had a pretty easy life from what I can tell. Another thing I noted, again, the clock battery was kaput, which is back here. Let's see if I can get you back into range here just a little bit better. Right over here is the clock battery. This is dead, so while I'm in here, let me go pull this out. That's installed now. Doesn't look like I damaged anything in the process. So let me get some compressed air and blow the rest of this out. So I'm using a special, please note, I'm using a very special anti-static brush here to deal with all of this. I don't like that thing at all. I don't like compressed air. Okay, so now what I've carefully done is carefully laid this on its side. I'm going to now remove the screws for this fan and actually take this out to take a look at it. I've cleaned out the heat sink as best I can. Looks like it's in good shape to go. There's this. The heat sink on this, I don't think you can even get off. It seems to be permanently attached here. I would normally repaste this, but I haven't yet to find it. I'm going to have to do more research on that. For right now, I'm just going to work with what I have and get it up and running. Oh, in the words of the old Alka-Seltzer commercials, oh, what a relief it is. What I finally realized is I had the wrong screwdriver, so I went out this one. This is another no-name brand. Or the one I used, I actually looked at my video of this and realized what I was doing wrong. So yeah, I went ahead and pulled that one out and managed to get the screw out finally after a lot of wrestling with it. So here it is, finally released, ready to go up. Let's now carefully look at this. I want to now clean off all the dust I can from here. Let me grab some compressed air again. Alright, now for the moment we've all been waiting for, at least I have. We're going to remove the hard drive. I'm going to use this screwdriver again. because of course I wasn't smart enough to think of that before. Ugh. Looks like this one's slipping now too. I mean, what is going on here? Ah, there we go. I don't know what it is, but all these screws are really very tight in here. I don't know if it's high humidity. I don't know if it's the environment this thing was exposed to, but they are just stuck in here good. Pull them out. If you try to aggressively pull them out and bend it, you'll ruin the adapter. So what you want to do is pop it out using a sponger. First, I'm going to remove this Kapton tape, which is holding these two wires down here. These need to stay connected, but we at the same time need to get them out of the way so that I can pull this thing out. Everything here is just stuck in place, but good. I don't know what's going on with this. Must have been the environment this was stored in. It just really is not happy at all. So I'm just going to pull that all the way out. And I think I'm going to pull this out right here and not break it. There you go, right there. Ah, there we are. Okay, so that's how it sits. So now I'm going to pull it out as such using my sponger. I'll actually pry it out. It's going to go behind here with the sponger and just bend it backwards. Gently push this thing away from the back. You don't want to break this board back here because that is how it interfaces with the computer. If this edge connector breaks back here, you will have no way of getting the hard drive in. So it's a good idea to be very careful with this, not bend the pins and just gently work it free. Oh, it's starting to come loose now. There we go. There we go. That popped out. And the hard drive is free. Just curious, what do we have in here? The flavor of the month is an Apple Variation Seagate. Pretty smooth running drive, I gotta say. These were really nice drives back in the day. Gonna put this someplace else. I'm probably not gonna use that drive ever again as a drive. Okay. And now for our replacement drive, which is that kit drive I put together, which has gone AWOL for the moment. Oh, here it is. It's right here. Also, I have to do the RAM. I'll do that a little bit later. So I believe this goes in upside down. Okay, so again, here's the drive. It is going to go upside down. I was right. I just looked over my notes on this. I'm going to slide it right in underneath the wire. Get to sit flat in the tube before I go any further. I got to make sure this is completely flat. Don't need to worry about magnets with this drive because, again, there's no magnetic storage. This is completely non-magnetic. Okay, lining it all up. Gently applying pressure to get it in. There it is. Whew. Sorry I had to take some cuts out of that, but it was a real pain to get this in. This thing is just not... This thing's been fighting me the whole time through. Let's go ahead now and put in my screws. If I use the right driver. Here we go. I'm trying to keep it organized and use as few tools as possible tonight, but that's clearly not going to happen. Now again, this is an SSD, so we don't need to make sure that it's tied down as tight as we would a hard drive, because there's no vibrations generated by these. One of the advantages of an SSD is that they're very tolerant to abuse. They don't have any moving parts that can break, like bearings, etc. They just sort of work and do their job. That should do it. I don't want to over-tighten it. Go, that should do fine. Again, 2 screws, one on the very front, one on the very back. That should be good enough. Okay, so now, let's get the rest of this together. So this end, again, the opening goes right here to the side here, so it's going to exhaust out of this fan area here, which actually surprisingly is very clean on this model, on this particular example of this model, I should say. Let me go get my screwdriver again and get these in. You can immediately feel the difference in bite this screwdriver has. Now it's time to put the actual assembly back together again before I lose any of the more of the screws and go any more insane. Okay. A little extra dust in here. Really not much dust in this thing. Doesn't look like this thing really got much mileage at all during its working life. Very low mileage system. I'm just going to line the edge connector up on the back here. Gently apply pressure down to that to get everything to lock in place. The edge connector is, again, something to be very careful with because that's how this unit actually talks to the, gets the drive to talk to the motherboard and everything else. It all has to work perfectly or it won't work at all. Oh my god. What the heck happened here? Oh no. Oh no. Okay, I think I'm in, right? Yep, it's sitting down. Okay, that's good. So I got these in place. Now it's time to put the antennas back in place. As such, this one clips onto the side over here. Like so. And this one over here goes over here. Once I get enough cable for it. This thing's snagged a little bit here. Oh, dear. There it is. All right. I gotta get around the RAM control here or it's going to be in big trouble. There we go. This one again locks in. Again, some of these have the plastic standoff on the bottom. I think this is an earlier design because it doesn't have that. Probably one of the early releases. I think the 4.2, if I remember correctly, and I do believe I'm right, was out all the through both revisions. So this is most likely an early revision 4.2, and therefore this standoff is. Therefore, these clips are used instead of the standoffs on this one. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, and I probably shouldn't have put this on, because I just realized there's one thing I got to do before I do this, do anything else, and that is to get rid of this RAM. I'm going to ground myself again. This ATEC RAM. I keep calling it ADATA, but it's not. 1 gigabyte, 333 megahertz PC2700. The specifications this thing uses. I know this will work because I've used it before in some of these projects I've done with these Mac Minis. Alrighty, and here we have it right out of the package. I'm going to now release the clasps and pop this RAM out. This is actually still very usable RAM, so if I actually have another one of these units coming in as a parts unit for this one, but since I didn't need the parts, or I don't, at least, well, knock wood, I don't need the parts yet. I may try to use this part to get it going, because that one has no image on the screen. You'll see more of that later. I plan to do a video on it, even if I end up just keeping it as parts and not doing much else with it. For some reason that other side there wasn't laying this up. Really weird, this thing. This RAM is stuck in there good, isn't it? Why is this so badly in there? Wow, that was stuck in there tight. Oh, I see what happened here. The wire is... Ooh, okay. Okay, that wire is a little bit too... But yeah, this is what's used in the flavor. Again, for today is Hynix 512. That's the high-end option for this particular unit. You can get as little as 128, but I believe the top you could get with it was 512 from stock. Grab my stuff again. I keep doing this over and over again because I'm not taking any chances. So now first we lined the little dimple in the middle of the RAM DIMM up with the dimple on this DIMM with the socket. Oh, it does face inward. That's strange. I guess this is just a design of the way this thing works. That this one has the RAM facing in, or they just installed it backwards in the earlier revision. As the others all had it, if I remember correctly, facing out. There we go. There we go. In nice and tight. And there we go. So now I'm just going to put my antenna back in here. You can tell where it goes because there's a little sort of cutout right here on the side of the plastic, which we're going to slip this into. And even though I'm probably not going to use it, there it is. Oh, no, it's not in right. There it is. Now it's in right. And even though I probably won't use that antenna, it is still in place now, and it's there. My logic being, why not? If it's there and you can make it work, why not make it work? You never know. Maybe I will at some point use that. I don't think so, but you never know. So I'm just going to use this tape now to... There's some Kapton tape I see they employed here to when they assembled this. I'm going to use that to keep these wires out of the way, so when I assemble this, it won't be a problem. Like that. Okay, now I'm ready to put the top back on. And, oh, actually, before I do that, it might help if I screwed down everything, wouldn't it? Oh, brother. I am not with it today at all, folks. Sorry. Oh, boy. Okay, that'll do. Okay, we're all set to put it back together again and fire her up. Antenna's back in place. Make sure all these wires are carefully guided, out of the way. So we preferably don't have any issues there. Use the Kapton tape again to hold this in place here. There's another piece of Kapton right here that'll hold that down. And now let's get the lid on this thing. And to put a lid on it. Okay, so this goes down like that. Now this didn't seal quite right when I got it because it took a little damage, so I'm not expecting a perfect fit from it. Okay, there we are. And with that, I have completed it. Now the next step is to get the software ready for this, which I will do in just a bit. Okay, the moment of truth, I just got a tone. Let's see if we get an image. It won't boot or anything right now because there is no drive, there's nothing installed on it. Okay, there it is, and the question mark Mac, which is actually fine because the drive is blank on this. So in a bit, I'm going to then get the drive made up for it, and we're going to go ahead and install OS 9 Lives. Okay, now that I know that this thing actually posts, let's go ahead now and get Mac OS 9 installed. Again, I'm using a special version of Mac OS 9, designed specifically to work with the Mac Mini, from a project called Mac OS 9 Lives. There's a custom variant of that. You'll have to do a search to find it. I don't want to give it a link because, again, these are constantly getting updated. Anywho, I'm going to go ahead now and start my unit up. I did have one of these copies from a previous time I did this, but I'm not sure how up-to-date that one is, and it's been a few years, so I figured why not just make another one. And again, CDs are dirt cheap, so why not? It'd be silly if I didn't do it. Why don't I want the most up-to-date version of the program? So anyway, let's just make sure she posts. Power on. Everything's all hooked up. Except my keyboard. That really would have been smart. Oh. How did I forget to do that? Very easily, that's how. Anyway, let's see if we get a post on the screen. I reach down here awkwardly and try to get my wire plugged in. Here? Possibly? There it is. Got these on long extension cords. I got a smaller keyboard on order for this thing that was period correct, which I'll probably start using with my Mac Minis. This one here is kind of big. There it is. As you see, it's got the question mark Mac, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It means that it's detecting that it doesn't have an OS. I've just connected my keyboard and mouse. I'm now going to take this disk and simply insert it into the optical drive. That's another note, you do need an optical drive to install this. Although I have gotten this to work, if I remember correctly, with an external one. Let's see if she works. It's a little bit rough, but it did work. If I remember correctly, this should just kick in. If not, I still have the old copy of this I can go back to. Oh, wait a minute, there it goes. It's pulling up. There we go. Yep, and there we go. And I'm using an adapter, unless it's kind of awkward. I have a VGA output to my monitor. I'm using a DVI connector to here. You can get DVI to HDMI outputs. And there we have the Happy Mac, because it's now booting up. So essentially, how this is working now is the Mac Mini is treating that disk as a hard drive. The CD I put in there, and it's going to boot it up. There is macOS 9.2. It's going to make a lot of noise, and it's going to boot through this procedure. It's going to take a bit, so I'll pause you and come back as soon as I'm loaded in here, and I'll show the procedure to get this installed. It's really simple from here in. Okay, this out of range sign is going to be on my monitor. Pardon me again on that. It's just the way this monitor is set up to work. Perhaps maybe I should try to get my other adapter out. If this becomes much of a problem, I may do that. Alrighty, folks, sorry about that. I tried to use a new adapter with my other monitor over here, with the HDMI job, and it didn't work right. So I'm going to go and... Alrighty, folks, sorry about that. I tried to use another adapter with my HDMI monitor over here, and it didn't work right. So I'm going back to just using the old school one over here with the DVI to VGA adapter, VGA to DVI adapter, whatever you'd like to call it. So anyway, I'm into the program right now. As you see, it's come up automatically with this little initialization thing. And again, with the stupid out of range warning. I'm going to go ahead now and hit initialize disk. This is the SSD I installed in before, and my monitor just shut itself off. Pardon me. This is why I prefer to use that other monitor, but apparently this does not play nice with HDMI adapters. There we go. Okay, so what I have to do now is initialize my ATA SATA drive, which is right there on the top, which it does detect, but is not initialized, which is the equivalent on a Mac of not being formatted or partitioned. So I'm going to click initialize right here. And it's going to now give me another warning, which tells me initializing this will destroy all data. Not a problem, because I don't actually have any data on this disk. It's a brand new one. So I'm just going to hit initialize and let it do its thing. Do its thing. And there it is, Mac Mini OS. It's now detected. And there, yep, it detects the bus it's on and everything else. So that did work. I can now quit out of that one. And now quit out of this program. Quit function. Of course, here's the little README file from all this. Next, I have to launch the Apple Restore software, which should be here on the back here. Oh, and once again, it goes off. Again, because this is an unusual resolution, which is probably why my HDMI adapter won't work, you have to mess with it. So I recommend having an old school monitor handy just to release the setup procedure right here. Once you do this, though, you won't have to worry about it, or shouldn't at least, from what I've seen. What I've had in the past, I should say. So I'm going to go over here now, make my way over to the Mac Mini Restoration CD so I can initialize the restoration program. This will also change the untitled, which is my hard drive on the side, which has popped up now, which is that SSD I installed, to the proper program. Here's that Apple's Restore software icon, which I'm going to click. As I click, again, I click the CD and that little window appeared. I'm clicking the Restore button. I have to move quick here because of how it is. Okay, an update on this project, and unfortunately things have taken a turn for the worse and are now essentially terminal. In addition to the fact that the sound won't work, and yes, I'm familiar with the fact that the OS 9.2 or OS 9 Lives, I should say, project for Mac Mini G4 does not allow the internal speaker to work. It has to do with the actual, as you can see right there, which I do have plugged in, headset jack / external speaker thing. it still doesn't work. There's no sound in it. And then there's another problem. Right over here, for example, I'm trying to run Chuck Yeager's Air Combat, and I get this curious alert telling me that it's going to go to black and white graphics. And then it gets something like this in here that you can't find the 12 color file. I don't understand why it's doing that. And the game won't even launch. Then if I go something like this one here, switch, it'll give me another error like that. And sometimes the game will run, but it'll just be completely corrupted. Here's the black and white graphics thing. And again, I get another file that it needs necessary colors to run, even though it isn't set up as such. So effectively, this system is terminal. Well, I've gone through it and I found that the graphics card appears to have a failure. These are known for having that problem if they've been run hard. This is most likely why the thing was put up for sale. I thought I was getting lucky, but I'm not. So the graphics card has got issues, and the sound system has issues. And it's two big strikes. If it was just the sound system, I would have tried to get this socket out of here that controls that and put a new one in. They're easy enough to come by if you know where to look. But the graphics card is terminal. I can't replace that because it's actually part of the board. The only way to replace that, the only way to replace that is to physically remove the board from the device and put a new one in. And in order to get a board, you have to buy a new one. So that effectively makes this project terminal. I do have another part source unit coming in, so maybe that'll be in better shape that I can mess with to get going. But this thing, unfortunately, is not going to work. And I've tried other games. I did sort of get the Yukon Trail working briefly, and it did work, but with no sound. And then even then, it wasn't right. And it's still kind of like that. It's sort of, so some things work, some things don't. But in general, this unfortunately is a fail. You can't win them all. Going back here, trying other settings, see if I can at least get it to start. Because before I could at least get this game started. But I won't do that at all now. We'll at least start here. Switch to black and white. Oh, now I got sound. What the heck? So this thing is really acting up. I can't figure it out. But the sound is very, very weak. You can just barely hear it. And you'll note now that the screen is black. So I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this project is terminal, but I'll keep you updated in case I find any other issues I can fix on it. Okay, so here's an update on my G4 Mac Mini that I converted to OS 9 and had graphics and sound problems. As you can just make out, the sound is working now, and as you can see, the graphics are working well now. Essentially, the only problem is, again, with the sound. It's very weak, don't know why. At the volume all the way up, I'm using my soundbar from my TV set right now to amplify it. It is audible, but just barely. It's workable, but I wouldn't call it great. But nonetheless, it is still usable, so I'm happy with how this turned out in the end. Turns out the graphics card issue turned out to be simply a corrupted program file. And you'll pardon me if I'm free camming this. I'm not actually using the keyboard right now because I can't do both at the same time and give you a reasonable image. But anyway, this worked out reasonably well. It's too bad the sound is weak, but I may look for a better set of speakers to try to enhance that, as I don't think it's worth going through all the trouble of yanking out the sound port on the Macintosh to see if it fixes anything. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Please like and subscribe. And as always, keep the metal side down. And keep those old Macintoshes running.